Jama with the banger.
Thursday as always. I'll let TJ introduce our guest today.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here and glad to introduce a man who usually doesn't need much of an introduction, but for the purpose of the podcast, we've got ourselves an investor professional, a senior partner at the venture capital firm Lighthouse Funds, and my very own uncle, Mukund Krishnaswami, on today to speak a little bit about his life in the financial industry and what it truly means to be the partner at a large business that he has run himself. We're glad to have you on here today. Just really getting into it. You know, me and you've had discussions about business and finance, everything in between. And I really am curious, you know, more specifically when it comes to your company, you know, what differentiates it, Lighthouse Funds, when it comes to the venture capital and financial industry at large? And what are some of the things that you've noticed in, you know, managing and being a partner at a company like that, especially during this pandemic?
Sure. Well, listen, guys, it's nice to be on, and it's nice to meet you, Paris, albeit virtually.
Likewise.
Listen, there's a lot of hype around the investment industry, and at its very core, it's not very different than any other business, right? You've got customers, you need to have happy customers, you got to do that stuff right. The interesting thing about what we do and the part that's not science is at the end of the day, it's all about the people that you surround yourself with. It's, you know, building a firm in this industry is about, you know, surrounding yourself with smart people, people who actually are intellectually curious, people who don't think that they know everything. One of the things I learned very early in my career is the more you think you know, the more likely you are to make mistakes. And you sort of assume that you know it, and you're like, you have that sort of oh shit moment. Am I allowed to say that on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
said much worse.
Okay, fantastic. So 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 that's a big part of it, right? You know, having smart, you know, sort of open-minded, humble people. And when we back companies, you know, we're looking for those same characteristics in the management, looking for the same characteristics in entrepreneurs. And, you know, you're looking for people that are surrounding themselves with smart people. You're looking for people who care about the people around them. And in many ways, that more than backing the right industry or backing the right product or the next widget or the next technology or the next app, that's what has always made the difference. And when we've picked the wrong guy or gal, we've invariably lost money. And when we've picked the right person, even during bad times, we've done well. And a lot of it, even it sort of bears itself out during the pandemic, right? You know, if you ever go on the Lighthouse website and you look at our tagline, it says dream, dare, scale, and care, right? We empower entrepreneurs to dream, to dare, we give them the money to scale, but a big part of it is care. We want people who take care of their people. We want people who take care of their environment, of their communities. And during the pandemic, you started to see how much that really mattered, right? Those are really nice words to put up when everything's going well, but it's when your customers are not there because they can't leave their house. You know, how are you taking care of your employees? How are you taking care of your community? All of that sort of comes back. And that's really about building high quality businesses, high quality brands. And when you do that right, that sort of follows you, right, in months and years to come. And that's been sort of what our learning has been and what we've seen over the last 20 plus years.
So I'm curious, you seem to hit a lot on the value of relationships, respect, being humble as well, because you said you're not supposed to be the all-powerful wisdom, knowledge person in the room. You're always looking to search and gain wisdom from experience and from different things like that through relationships. So how does the relationships in the workforce kind of translate to how you approach relationships on a social level? Does it kind of coexist in that sort of sense?
It's interesting, right? We tend to surround ourselves with people that are similar to us in many ways, right? And it's natural, right? And
Yeah.
many of the people who work with me are also my closest friends. My partner with whom I started the business, we first met in 1992 when
Wow.
we were, I was a freshman in college. And that friendship sort of gave way to a business relationship, and now we've built a business together over the last 2 decades. But I think one of the great joys of sort of surrounding yourself with open-minded people is oftentimes you find that each person has friends from very different walks of life, right? And I think there is a certain, one that's just interesting, right? If I had to surround myself with just a bunch of fund managers who just talked about companies and this and that, the other, it makes for pretty boring conversations, sometimes, right? Especially around the dinner table. But I think one of the things you find is you tend to find people of varying interests. But at a core, we tend to surround ourselves with people with very similar values, right? And so people who respect education, people who are open-minded, people that will take feedback, people that will, that's a big part of, I think that's a big part of our own happiness and how it's how we've built our friendships, it's how we've built our business. And I think they really support each other. And I think that's sort of how life has been for us.
You've spoken a little bit on the importance of relationships. I can tell, I can say as you're my uncle, the importance of family and having that as part of your, at your side at all times, even when it comes to work. At the end of the day, employees, employers, it's a family environment. You want to have that inclusive environment so that you're building trust and you're able to get things done. So I'm curious, since your company mostly focuses or has focused on investing in entrepreneurs in Asia and has now moved across the world, what's been your governing philosophy when it comes to managing all the intricacies of running a firm, and what's kind of some of the biggest problems you faced or potentially the biggest failure that you've had to face as a partner, and how have you learned from it?
It's interesting. When you run a business, you do want to take care of people like a family, right? And I used to say that, when I would interview for jobs when I was young, but I never really knew what that meant, right? But just because you treat people like family doesn't mean that you don't run the business and have standards, right? Yeah. So, ours is a business where, like it or not, you have to, you are graded based on your performance, right? Sure. How you work with your entrepreneurs, what value are you delivering? How much money are you making for investors, right? Yeah. So I could love you like a son, but at the end of the day, our investors are pension funds, they're retirees, they're endowments. They need us to make money for them. And so if you're not delivering that, I've got to separate my sort of care for you from, maintaining standards, right? Yep. And so I think what part of sort of doing that also means being very, very clear with people as to what they can expect from the firm in terms of growth, development, support, and what we expect from them in terms of performance, right? And having a very, very open dialogue about those things. And for young people that are some of your listeners, that's one of the things I'd encourage them to think about, which is you can go take a job anywhere. But you want to go to a place, especially when you're young, that actually has a very clear development plan for you. Yeah. You want a place that is honest with you when you're doing well and rewards that, both in terms of responsibility and compensation and all that stuff that you want, But at the same time, is honest with you when you're not doing well, gives you the coaching or guides you to a role or maybe even a place outside of that organization when you're not suited for it. Because that's oftentimes people stagnate because they don't know their own limitations. People around them are caring too much, and as a result, don't actually show them, hey, listen, you're not good for this. And what your real interest is something else. And that's true whether you're in business or you're in law or you're in medicine or you're in the arts. I mean, at the end of the day, career progression, you need people around you, and that sort of feedback and that mentorship needs to be there. If not, it's really, really hard to progress. As an organization, I think that's the thing that we didn't do really well. And as a result, early on, people that we just held on to people, and that wasn't necessarily good for them, and it wasn't good for us. And as we progressed, we got a lot more strategic about those things. And you can do that without sort of just showing people the door, right? It's not, it doesn't have to be cutthroat and ruthless. You can be supportive, but at the same time achieve those goals.
It kind of reminds me of, if you think of it in a sports terminology, if you're an owner, you're a general manager, it's more about the way you go about your business, the way you go about releasing your players, adding value to the team. You're going to have to make those decisions. You're going to have to make those bottom line decisions that helps those that invest in your company. But at the end of the day, you want to do it in a way where you're actually building an image for other people who may be interested in coming into the company, or potential entrepreneurs to work with the company, or investors to invest, to say, hey, look, this is an inviting space where we respect people. And even if you're not doing your job, we're going to let you go in a way that's respectful and a way in some dignity. And I think that's an important quality to have as a business.
I'll give you, again, a lot of it is around integrity, and think about a brand, right? Think about think about the best brand you love, or think about a sports team that you love. Think about one of your Charlotte teams, right? And a lot of businesses don't think about things like sports, but at the end of the day, one of our operating partners used to run Procter and Gamble, the big consumer business out in Asia, and he always says every business is like a sports team, right? You want fans, right? So you're going to have moments. You're going to have a season where you just can't get the ball out of the infield, right? You're going to have a season where you're fumbling it in the red zone every single time. But you want people to say, you know what, I'll forgive it because it's a good franchise. I'm going to support them. I'm going to keep showing up at the stadium. And likewise, in a product business, you're going to have Coke generate new Coke and be like, that's crap. But people kept buying Coke because they believed in the brand. Likewise, in the investment business, you're going to have periods where you're going to generate losses and make mistakes. But you want people to stick with you because you communicate well and you stand for something and you have the right values. And I still remember when I grew up in Baltimore, as they just read, and it's I was a Baltimore Orioles fan, even though they didn't win a World Series after I was 7 years old, right? And the icon. Well, the icon. I was coming to that. The icon of Baltimore was Cal Ripken Jr., right? And for a number of years, his father was the third base coach, and then he was the general manager of the team. And they fired Ripken sort of overnight without any sort of rhyme or reason. There was a business reason because the team wasn't winning, but the impact that had in terms of fans who loved the family so much and said, well, wait a second, if they'll do that to their star's family, what do you think they're going to do to Baltimore? Right. And so again, you've got to think about holistically everyone around you and what that means for your image and your brand. And even for you individually, as you think about your life and your career, you want to think about those types of decisions and whether you're building a fan base, right? Because when you build a fan base, people will keep coming to the stadium. People will keep helping you. People will help you when you make that misstep in your career. And I think it's a good way to actually think about it. It's a great analogy.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit, I did a lot of investigating journalism over my years, a lot in politics, swing counties, and kind of understanding people's thoughts on the political spectrum, and not getting directly into politics, but I interviewed a man on Wall Street and asking him about candidacy and things of that nature, and the idea that he portrayed was it doesn't really matter to him who is our commander-in-chief, who's running our country, because at the end of the day, he's going to be successful. He's going to define success on his own without a government overwhelming his finances and everything in that sense. So I wanted to hear your kind of thoughts on that. Can you relate, or do you kind of disagree with that?
If at the end of the day, my view, and and this is a very sort of, it probably leans slightly center to, I hate the label libertarian, but I'll use it in this context for those of you who understand it. The more government stays out of the way, generally business tends to do better, right? And that doesn't mean there isn't a role for government. There needs to be some degree of regulation, right? There needs to be, we get richer every day. Let's be clear. And as we get richer every day, there's nothing wrong in paying our fair share of taxes. You do need to take care of those who don't have healthcare, that don't have education. But in general, and this is not a moral argument, the more there are massive changes in policy, it becomes really difficult to make business decisions, right? So if I know that my tax rate at a corporate level is going to be 28%, which is what Biden is likely proposing, versus 21, I can then do my budgeting based on that, right? If I know it's 21, better for me, but I'm not making a moral judgment on what should be right or wrong. I tend to believe that lower taxes are better for certain things within limits, but I don't think they should be zero. Right?
Yeah.
But the flip side is, if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about where I want to invest my money over the next 2, 3, 5 years, and I don't know if it's going to be 20% or 60%, I'm just going to pause, right? Because I don't know how much money I'm going to have after tax to reinvest and do various things. So until there's policy clarity, I tend to wait. And by the way, this is me at a micro level, but at the end of the day, sort of when you think about the economy as a whole, that's how people make decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what's important is that the commander-in-chief, I think, is actually really important in terms of setting the moral compass of the country, general direction, what are the things we're going to do. But what I worry a lot more about is when I have massive changes in policy, either way, because when there's massive changes, then I don't know how to react, and I don't know how my customers and others around me will react. And when we invest around the world, one of the biggest risks we face is, for all the political rhetoric in the United States, changes in policy are reasonably sort of incremental. Right? If the marginal tax rate for the rich goes from 37 to 39%, yeah, I'm a little less happy, but it's not, it doesn't make a material difference as much as the people on the news will tell you it makes a difference. It just doesn't, right? But when you're operating in emerging markets in Asia or Africa, where there can be massive shifts in policy. Oh, you could invest in such a sector. Suddenly, as a foreigner, you're not allowed to. Or we are going to make you pay a tax that never existed before, or so on and so forth. Suddenly, those are risks I can't price. And it becomes a lot harder to make decisions. So for all the debates we see in the press here about political differences between the parties and right versus left, I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference because all the changes ultimately are more incremental. With a few exceptions, but in general, the more predictable the decision making or the predictable the policies, the easier it is to make decisions, and generally the better the economy does.
With your comments on that, I'm curious, like talking about the major changes, something that we've had over the last couple of months that was kind of just a major shakeup of the market in many ways is what happened with Robinhood. It was talked about for weeks on end. What were your thoughts on, Robinhood and the exploitation sometimes of shorting stock, and also the situation in regards to these individuals getting on Reddit and working cohesively to essentially increase the power of a company and value of a company when the company itself was not doing too well, both in AMC, when it comes to GameStop, Dogecoin, a lot of other, old companies. I'm sure Blockbuster was probably one of those stocks as well. What were your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
It was, yeah.
Blockbuster. the Blockbuster CEO had the ability to buy Netflix for like a
Yeah.
song in the late
Yeah.
90s.
Unreal.
I mean, we've all made mistakes, but seldom that you'll look back.
Yeah, but if he bought Netflix, it probably never would have been Netflix. Never would have been as great. That's the thing.
Bingo.
So.
Right. It's I think that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Listen, it's at the end of the day, markets are inefficient, and if there was perfect information and everyone had the ability to analyze it the same way, you would never make excess returns, right? If the large institutional investors got together and somehow moved the price up, it would be called manipulation. The reality is a bunch of individuals getting together, and organizing on Reddit or some sort of forum, at the end of the day, are probably not commanding the types of volume that amounts to that. And again, I don't have a legal lens on this. I'm not a lawyer. And so there may be lawyers who are in your audience who are like, no, Mukund's wrong, and that's fine. I accept that.
Yeah.
I don't have any issue whatsoever with a bunch of folks getting together and say, I'm going to stick it to guys like Mukund who may have short positions in something, and I'm going to make them lose money. You know what? All's fair in love, war, and the markets, right?
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with that. The thing I am concerned about is when people like me who are professional money managers, when we lose money, we have risk controls in place, or for the most part. And we don't ever lose, or we seldom lose more than we can afford to lose. Whereas in this sort of attempt to democratize the market, Robinhood has given access to these types of opportunities, if I can call them that, to a wide range of people who may not have the financial ability to absorb the loss. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's great while the party's going, and hey, I actually went long and it kept going up and up and up. But then if you watch the volatility in in AMC or in GameStop, it went down as quickly as it went up. And then suddenly the professional managers started playing volatility, right? And there are ways that you can make money based on volatility that's neither long nor short, right? And so the thing I worry about is Robinhood at its core, the ability to sort of get more people, especially young people, into the market is actually a very good thing. And you and I have had this conversation at a personal level, which is start investing young. It's okay to lose a little bit, because that's you don't want to get into that in your 50s. You want to start in your 20s. But without the appropriate sort of training, risk controls, that's where it gets dangerous, because you'll have people that just don't have the wherewithal to really assess the risk, one, and two, for that one individual, they may lose what may seem like a very small amount of money to somebody else, but that could be their entire savings. And that's where I worry that as the mission may be good, but you've got to have certain controls in place to make sure that people don't, in trying to take advantage of these types of things, don't actually hurt themselves more.
That's so interesting. And speaking on young people, I feel like we weren't taught enough in school, in grade school, in high school, middle school. We weren't taught about really the economy or the world's economy, for instance, at all. And so we get to college, we take macroeconomics, and that's basically it. We get the general sense of how it works, everything like that. But I don't think people actually actively retain that information unless they're studying economics, finance, or something in that specific field. So what do you think the education system is lacking with that? And what are some of your thoughts on how we can improve upon that?
You've got an hour. You can edit this later. I think it's one of the great sins of history that we have a country as wealthy as we do. And an education system that is so drastically underfunded, right? And this was the staggering statistic from a year ago, I think it was 2019. If you took the earnings in 2019 of the top 25 fund managers in the country, hedge fund managers, that was equal to the total compensation earned by every kindergarten teacher in the country.
Mm.
25 and by the way, I think what I do is really important for the world. It ain't that important, right? I move money from one pocket to the other. Well, teachers, doctors, policemen, women, firefighters, you can name a lot of people who take on a lot more risk and mean a lot more to the world than I do.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think there's a massive issue in terms of underinvestment in education. And it's being filled by groups like Teach for America and stuff like that are trying to get young people to do stuff, which I think is really important. But I think there's underinvestment, one. Programmatically, there's just a lot of stuff that is disconnected from reality, right? And so some of the basic things like financial literacy and stuff are just not taught. And so there's a lot of people that are focused on it. And everyone has said, everyone thought ed tech was going to sort of be this panacea where, we can supplement what people are missing with technology. And so, but what the pandemic has taught us, and, I've got two young kids, or one not so young kid and one young kid.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've learned is teachers matter. The social interaction in schools matter. You can't just learn, on Zoom or on Khan Academy. And by the way, my kids are at really good private schools, right? And so so you can imagine the folks that don't have the funding in their schools, what it's like, right? Where the kids don't have the internet, the kids don't have the laptops, the kids they're showing up to school hungry. I mean, there's so many issues like that we need to fix. And then you can get to things like financial literacy and stuff that every kid should be taught, along with basic reading and math and all that stuff.
Sure.
But I want to touch on something else, Paris, that you mentioned, which is, we learned macro and microeconomics and then nothing else. I also think oftentimes people think decisions around business and investing are a lot more complicated than they are, right? It's very easy to say, even what I do is not very complicated, right? At the end of the day, companies I invest with take a certain amount of money. They may take it from shareholders or they may take it from the bank. They take all that money and they put it into a machine, or they use it to pay a bunch of programmers to build a piece of software. And then that machine spits out shirts, or the software sells, they sell an app, right? And they make a certain amount of money from every sale, right? And they make a certain amount of profit from every sale because there's a cost associated with it. Yeah. And the real question is, how much profit can they make, and how long does it take to sort of pay back the loans and then pay money to shareholders? And can you do that while still paying a fair tax rate and still paying your people properly? And this is not rocket science. But I think a lot of people tend to make it more complicated than it is. And then when you come back to things like GameStop and stuff like that, you start wondering, well, wait a second. At the end of the day, the market is about supply and demand. When demand is greater than supply, price goes up. When supply is greater than demand, price goes down. So when you have big hedge funds that are selling the stock short, right? Ultimately, that's a supply of stock. And and by the way, the hedge funds are doing it in millions of shares. So you've got massive supply. The demand is coming from a bunch of, Redditors, that's what they're called, who are buying small lots. Demand is there, but it's in really small quantities. Guess what? If you're betting on demand over supply, it might be there today, so the price goes up. But if I take a 5-week view, 5-month view, 5-year view, those hedge funds have way too much money and the supply is going way up and the stock is going down, right? And so it doesn't take a college education in finance to figure out what the long-term trend is, right? And I think those are the types of things that you can teach people. And I think oftentimes people say, I don't understand it, but it's important that people learn to trust that sort of common sense and just thinking about it in sort of day-to-day. And I think a lot more people have that common sense than are willing to actually sort of exercise it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, based on what you spoke about there, and even just like your work at Lighthouse, since you've worked, in Asia, I'm curious if you believe the Forbes article that says that in 2040, China is going to take over the world's economy, which includes tech, trade, imports, exports, when it comes to the government, when it comes to financials. I'm curious, do you think it's going to happen by 2040? Do you think it's going to happen earlier? Do you think it's already happened? I'm curious what your thoughts are on China.
In many ways, it's already happened in certain ways, right? So macroeconomics or economies, right? At the end of the day, economies are giant Ponzi schemes, right? And I don't mean that in the negative sense, right? You've got a population, and the bigger your population, the more they're going to spend. They just need more houses, they need more shirts, they need more cars, they need more everything, right?
Yeah.
And then, a properly sort of educated population gets a little bit more productive, and so they do things a little bit better. And so, and basically, economic growth is a combination of your population growing and your population getting a little bit more productive, right? So if you just sort of look at that, China continues to grow, although because of their one-child policy, their population is going to sort of top out. Yeah. But productivity keeps growing because of the way their sort of economy and the government and everything is set up.
Yeah.
India, same way. You know, India's population will continue to grow, and if the country gets a few things right, productivity will grow as well. So you're going to see that taking over as well. The interesting thing that people forget about is you can have the largest populations over there, but there's a whole element that people forget about, which is the US still dominates the world in terms of one thing, which is the dollar, right?
Yes.
And so we still have here the dominant reserve currency. And every couple of years, there will be an article about, oh, the Chinese currency will do that, or the euro will do that. I'm not convinced that's going to happen anytime soon. And what I mean by that is in the next 15 or 20 years. And the reason for that is there is just so much faith in the financial system here that's ultimately what continues. And so let me give you a very simple example for those, you've studied economics. And so in microeconomics, you talk about sort of, you always want to do that which is sort of the ideal thing for you, right? So if you're in trade, right, you want to trade that which is you're better at and buy things that you're less good at making, right? It's sort of comparative advantage, as they call it. Now, and so everyone says, oh, China, we import everything from China. They manufacture everything, and therefore we're losing money. That's not the case, right? Let's say you go into Walmart and you buy a shirt that's made in China. You buy that shirt for $5. It was made in a Chinese factory for $1.50. China's made 70% margin on that shirt, right? How do you pay for that? You pay for it with a $5 bill, right? And that $5 bill goes to China. What if you spent on that $5 bill? Well, the US Treasury printed it for about a penny. So our margin on the dollar is 99%. So we export, you can think of it as we import everything we use. We actually export dollars. And what do foreign countries need to do when they get those dollars? They have no choice but to buy dollar assets, right? So they buy US Treasury bills. They keep our interest rates low. And then suddenly we can buy houses with 2% mortgages, right? Now, the interesting thing is, as the rest of the world grows, we may still continue to buy stuff from China or Vietnam or India or whatever, but at the end of the day, they will also continue buying their dollars from us, right? And so the US financial system will continue to be front and center so long as we maintain not too much debt. And we're nowhere close to too much debt with the amount of debt we have on our balance sheet as a country. And so if you look at it that way, yeah, China may be the largest economy in the world by 2040. It'll probably get there long before 2040, but that will not displace the US's relevance, because at the end of the day, we are still the central sort of money maker in the world.
The almighty dollar.
Almighty dollar.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of the things that we do to preserve that is actually very, very important.
That's so interesting. And I know that, even speaking on, there's been a lot of anti-China, anti-this since the vaccine and the pandemic. But we have to realize, there's no getting around China. Is always going to be here, especially you alluded to purchasing a lot of consumer goods from China. You go to any sort of store, clothing store, furniture store, anything really, China, made in China, made in China. So that's going to be there. It's here to stay. And also, I wanted to talk about your family's background. Actually, I found it very fascinating. You're first generation American, which is awesome. Parents from India. And I went to high school in Los Angeles with a lot of Hispanic kids, a lot of first generational Mexicans, Salvadorians, Guatemalans, Ecuadorians, all these different people from all these different places. And their parents maybe didn't even speak English, going to their homes, having such a traditional feeling of of just like the family of immigrants, and that's what America was built on, and that's we are all immigrants at the end of the day in this country. If maybe it was 5 generations ago, 3, 2, whatever it was, but I just want to kind of hear your thoughts on coming here, being that first generation individual, and then how did you get into finance from that? How did that arise?
So as a first generation immigrant, right, as the child of immigrants, right,
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily grow up with a lot, one, but there is this constant focus on education as a means to an end, right? Because people came to the US, continue to come to the US in search of a better life, right? And that can sound idealistic, but I think that's largely true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and so there's this constant focus on, study, get the good grades, go to the good school, make money, and money not for money's end, but because of what that means, because so many generations have struggled to get my parents on that. And my dad literally got on a ship in 1961 to come here, right? And these days, pre-pandemic could travel, be in 3 countries in 2 days, right?
Yeah.
And so that was always the focus, and there was a very sort of almost utilitarian focus, right? And that's what led me through that focused me in terms of my education. It focused me in terms of college and even my first jobs. And there were a couple of struggles there, right? It was always go down the path that ensures safety, right? And there is a big push where you go into economics, or you go into engineering, or you go into medicine, and you see a lot of people sort of my generation and today in their 40s and 50s who grew up in the 70s and 80s who've sort of gone into those fields, children of immigrants. So risk taking in some ways was de-emphasized because the families had already taken big risks and now wanted to sort of get the flag planted. They wanted stability for our generation, our children's generation, so on and so forth. And then there was this constant struggle between the culture that you grew up with and the culture you were assimilating into. And it was also very different 20, 30 years ago because it wasn't as widespread to see, someone that looked like me or ate what I ate at home. You didn't have Indian restaurants in every town, and you didn't have people of color, people who are Indian on TV, and now you can't turn on a TV show that you don't see somebody, right? And I think every sort of ethnicity and immigrant groups has that story. And listen, there's very sad events that are happening. We saw what happened in Atlanta a couple of days ago. I don't think that's not representative of 99.9% of the population. I truly believe that, right? That we are a nation of immigrants. We're a nation that embraces that. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't have appropriate policies and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, that sort of immigrant sort of mentality, that focus drives success. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And what that has allowed me to do is, in my career, then take risk. It's afforded me opportunities. It has also afforded me the ability to provide for my own children the ability to say, you know what, you don't have to go and become that straight-laced engineer, business person, doctor. My younger one loves arts, right? And again, suddenly I don't have to think about, hey, I want you to focus on something so you can provide for yourself. I want you to go do what you truly enjoy.
Yeah.
And many of us are doing what we enjoy because it just happens to be what we did. But I think that the next generation can truly go do things. And I think that's the story. That's the story of America. I think it's the story of many other countries as well, increasingly.
Yep.
And I hope that continues. I really hope that continues. And I think that's absolutely terrific for the country and for communities and for generations.
Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
And we've been happy to have you on today. I think one of the most nuanced conversations we've had so far on this podcast. I appreciate you, Mukund, for coming on and enlightening us with your knowledge and your wisdom. And you probably will never hear me say that to you directly ever again.
I'm gonna capture that. I don't know how to do that because I'm old, but I will capture that snippet when
one of your kids will show you.
It'll always exist.
Trust me, my kids are not going to help me sort of capture that because they don't want to hear it either. But I'll figure it out.
They're too busy with their new dog now. which they just got.
That is true. Thank you guys for having me on. And,
absolutely.
It's great to meet you, Paris, and thank you guys very much.
You as well.
It's been a pleasure.
So much. It's been an absolute
Hope to see you soon.
Good luck. Take care.
That was sick, man. That's dope. The fam,
Yeah.
the fam bam
The
coming
fam.
on the pod right there. I love it. That was dope, dude. I loved really everything he was speaking about, and a lot of the things is what I think about, and I agree with so many of the points he hit on, especially with, I think, our education system. That was so fascinating to me, because I've been saying this for years, and I've noticed it for years. And this is even speaking to me being a writer. People can't God, I'm like trying not to cuss again, but fucking write for shit. People can't write for shit, dude. There's like a lost art, and I can't. I'm not bilingual. I don't speak any other language. I mean, I could get away with a little Spanish, maybe a little French, like "Buddy woo run they woo 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 boo 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 boo," or a little Spanish shit like it was talking about. But having said that, I think that people are lacking a lot of skills that were valued in his generation. So the baby boomers and things like that, people really valued penmanship, for instance. People right nowadays, you can't even read the hell they're writing half the time, because people are so it's such a digital, technologically advanced world that we're always constantly typing on our computers, and that in turn really affects our writing styles, how we write, how we really portray ourselves in written word, on a paper, pen and pad, whatever it may be. And people don't really have the ability to express themselves that way artistically or formally anymore. And I feel like that even goes to economics. People take these classes because they have to, like, oh fuck, we're going through economics. I enjoyed learning about it, but I didn't enjoy getting tested on it. So that was a turnoff to me. I think that it should be a requirement for everybody to learn, but I think you should be learning it from day one, not just you get thrown in this general ed class in college with,
and more practically, just more practicality
too. Yeah, more practicality, exactly. And that's just why I was turned off to it. I think it's super important. And like now I know a lot about it, and I still retain some information from it. I get the general overall sense of it. And people also don't realize, like, we live in a cyclical nature, in a cyclical world, in a cyclical economic structure. So there's going to be the bad, there's going to be the good. Bad, good is going to keep going around. We just have to hit on the times that is good, and then be prepared for the bad. And that's what people don't realize. People are just jumping the gun, like he talked about Robinhood, talked about all these different microtransactions and different things like that within the investment opportunities that they embark on. And people are like, oh my God, let's get on the Reddit with the Redditors, whatever the hell, wave, and try to make our money. And then, oh shit, look at this, we're making ton. Oh my God, I just woke up the next morning, it's all gone. What happened? What the hell? It's because people don't understand. That's how things work. Everything, volatility and things of that nature. But yeah, man, your uncle was dope. He was great.
No, man, I think it was the most. It was one of the most nuanced conversations we've had. I think he provided a unique perspective. And I really wanted, us to have that. I know there's a lot of young viewers of this podcast who might be interested in his financial side and the fact that, he's been an investor. And so there's that part of it. And there's also the side where, yes, he is a little bit, he's a wealthier individual, but he came from, from a family that, from India, that both his parents worked for the government and here in the US, and he didn't have an easy upbringing by any standards. And I think he worked towards that. And I think more specifically, I agree with his comments on, the educational system, how we are the wealthiest country in the world, yet our educational system lags behind. A lot of that has to do with the practicality, like you were saying. Like, we didn't get taught money management, we didn't get taught taxes, we didn't get taught basic things financially on how to just make sure that we're doing things like investing, we're doing things like understanding the economy from both a macro and a micro level. And then even if you go into other things like history or science, a lot of it is just not learning the practicality of things and not learning the true history of things. It's like making sure that we're educating people honestly, we're educating people with the most relevant information and the most updated information, because I could care less about stuff that I don't need to know when the time comes for me to get a job, start working towards, getting a mortgage, start living a life, building a family. Like, part of the problem is you've got a situation where we're not learning things that are, number one, interesting, so that are like enlightening people to want to continue to learn. And then secondly, are not engaging to the level where they're actually helpful in real society or real day-to-day activities. And if we don't build an educational system that is more 21st century, that focuses on the economy, that focuses on helping those who are in need by educating them in a way that provides more knowledge on these certain kind of things, so they're able to get themselves, if they have to, out of these tough situations, then we're never really going to move on. And that's going to require investment. That's going to require public investment. That's going to require us to take some actions. But I do think that he made some good points from his point of view of what, how volatility in the market, can go both ways. You can get a situation where I do think, I think most people would agree that it's wrong for Robinhood to shut down individuals' ability to invest, even if they were investing in a situation where they were, essentially making the stock price go up.
Based on it's not illegal, it's
not illegal, but exactly, it's not illegal at all. Yeah. It's just the value isn't real, but at the same time, they have every right to do it, and they shouldn't be punished for doing it in a way that is new, using social, using media, doing it in a new kind of way that hasn't been done before, just because they don't have this. But at the same time, many of those individuals don't have that risk mitigating factor, where if they do lose money, if you came in on it a little bit later, not on the initial Reddit stream, but let's say 2 or 3 days in, because you heard it from a friend and you lost money, what happens then, right? There's lawsuits that go into action. It's a whole situation. I think it's worth that. Those nuances, I think, is what we're missing in discussion in society. And that's something that I think, we hope to continue to bring going forward.
Yeah, I agree, man. And, with that, it's like, it goes back to even like the political spectrum too, and a lot of people, I think, that did that because Biden was in office, they felt a little more empowered or whatever it is. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass here, but hopefully that's the truth, because I think that this man who's in office now is hopefully going to empower more individuals to act on their wants, desires, needs, as opposed to being shut down by a guy that's really just filling the country with hate. So now we kind of have this hope, and a lot of people, look, people are kind of upset with Biden right now. I'm getting the sense, at least with all the young people I'm surrounded by. I just think that's because people are fucking impatient. That we have the attention span that is less than that of a goldfish as human beings now, which is so embarrassing. And people just want things quick, to the minute, right, presented to them. In seconds, microseconds, milliseconds, whatever it is. And as opposed to letting things play out, man. The guy's been in office for like a month and a half. Like, give him a damn break. Let time tell, I guess I could say. And even with the vaccine, May 1st is the date. So that's not very far off. So that should be up center present enough for people to be like, all right, I'm down with it. Cool.
People are definitely out.
Hopefully it works out. Yeah, for sure. And like with the vaccine, man, what are your thoughts on it? I know I talked to a lot of people. My chiropractor yesterday said he's not going to get it just because he's aware that 150,000 people die because of prescribed medications in America each year. So it's like, I don't really, I think I put enough shit into my body where I don't think a vaccine is gonna kill me. Like alcohol and fucking, I don't smoke cigarettes, so I never smoked a cigarette in my life. So no nicotine for me. But let me hear your thoughts on the vaccine, bro. What's up with that?
No, I think it's great, man. I think it's good that we're getting it, that it's come through this fast. I think, look, I'm not one to really go around giving credit. I think that this administration's done a really good job speeding things up. I'm not going to go and destroy the last administration on this one particular thing, because I do think that, a lot of this had to do with it. And my uncle had actually talked to me about this personally. when we were speaking, he said, look, a lot of the things, it's a little bit of a trade-off, which is that while I may be an individual who thinks that I want everyone in this country to have healthcare, and I think we should have a service like that, it's tough because if you do cut the profits off of pharmaceutical companies, vaccines could take longer to roll out. I mean, that's just factually accurate. Now we can discuss what's the, what's moral in that argument, what's correct, what's the right thing to do, how often is a pandemic really going to arise? But it is a fair point to say, which is that it's tough to work with these companies to get these vaccines done, efficiently, effectively, and really, in this quick amount of time, which was less than a year. So I do think in that regards, it's been good. I give, right now I'm focused on what's going on now. So the current president's doing a good job in getting that rolled out, has a vision, has a plan on how we're going to get things distributed. And I think it's good that he's putting deadlines onto people's heads, like July 4th. You want people to be out there with their families. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's what's going to happen. But I think a lot of people we're getting to the end here and people want to kind of get back into things. And I understand that. I think it's about managing things. More specifically on his performance so far, I think I'm not one of the young people who's upset, to be quite honest with you. I think he's done a good job. I think he's done a good job. I think there are things that I may disagree with. There are things. Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing is always the foreign policy thing. I've said that I'm very uniquely different on foreign policy than most liberals are, but most Democrats would be. That being said, I would say that on the domestic policy, he targeted an issue that's very popular, put forward a plan, $1.9 trillion, one of the biggest stimulus packages this country's ever had. I do think that there could have been more done to get the $15 minimum wage in there. It would have been interesting. It would have been a shift in the economics, though. It would have changed some things. But I do think that since it's a policy that would have come till 2025, it wouldn't have come up in 1 year. It had been 4 or 5 years in the making. I think it could have been popularized to even more of an extent, even though it's already pretty popular. But he got a bill that's 72, 74% popular amongst the American people. I mean, it's got child tax credit of, I think, somewhere around $3,000 a year for certain kids, which will cut child poverty in half. That's a good program. I think the 1,400, I would have liked it to have been 2,000, even though I know there were 600 earlier, just because it's a nice round number and it's easy to say, hey, I said it and I did it and I got that number out to you. It's just an easy thing to run on. But 1,400 is 1,400. It's still going to help the economy, going to help consumers, and that's really good. So I think there's so many good things in the bill. State and local aid's good. Almost every aspect of it was popular. Yet I think it's interesting that they had to get it through reconciliation when half the Republicans supported the bill. Half the Republican voters supported the bill, but none of the politicians supported it. And this is kind of where I get into where there's the divide, which is that the Republican voters economically are actually a lot more center left than people think, but they're culturally quite conservative. Yeah. And so they're open to when people say, hey, we're going to give you some money so you can do things. They're like, oh, we like that. They're not like the old Republicans of like, no, just give tax cuts to the rich and let it trickle down on us. No. They really want investments in their communities because they're from rural communities, stuff like that. Secondly, I would say that, more importantly, I think the climate overall is changing. I think he's got to make sure that he puts forward programs that are popular first. So don't make the mistake that Obama made, which was that he didn't really do a lot. He had a lot of power, didn't do a lot with it, did a stimulus bill, watered the bill down because he wanted to get Republicans, never got Republican votes. The bill wasn't good. Biden didn't make that mistake. He did get 1.9 trillion. In addition to that, focus on things that are popular by the American people. I would say if he wants to touch on healthcare, get into that after the pandemic, because I wouldn't get into it right now. Start with infrastructure, get on things that people are like, yes, we need roads, we need bridges, we need jobs. Sure. Once the unemployment goes back down to 3%, say, hey, look, I want to cut the unemployment in half again through jobs. That's what I would do if I was him. Focus on the basics, and you can get all around the nonsense, all around the culture and the things, the debates that are happening on the ground. If you can stay above that and really focus on the economy, I think you have a guy who could be incredibly popular as president.
I agree, bro. And you know who else is really into giving jobs as of late? Maybe
who
you
is?
guess.
Yes.
Billy B, baby. Billy B. Giving jobs, giving checks, giving money.
Yo, my phone was buzzing, bro.
Crazy first week. New England Patriots spent more money in the first day of the free agency. It wasn't even the first day of free agency officially, but more money in one day of free agency, I guess I could say, than the Patriots spent the past 3 years, which is insane. They got a lot of reinforcements, I guess you could say. And this is what I'm challenging Cam Newton. If you still suck ass, you are the worst piece of shit to ever step on a football field. So don't fuck us in that. Don't fuck us this year, Cam Newton.
It's funny because they started with Cam. He was the first free agent you brought on. And so everything looked bad, and then you bring in like 11 guys.
Yeah. So Cam's deal too, I think this will hopefully motivate him. It would motivate me for sure. So he has a ton of incentives in his deal. So it's worth up to 15 million. I may be wrong here, but around that range. But he's only guaranteed 3.5, 4. So his incentives are like the Pro Bowl, playoffs, 10-win season, Super Bowl appearance. So there's a lot of different incentives, bro. Yeah. So if I'm him, I'm slapping ass, taking names, cashing checks, bro. So you better show out this year for me. You better fucking bring it, baby. I don't want to sit here watching him throw duds down the goddamn field every fucking play and nah, bro. You got to figure this shit out. And Panthers lost Curtis Samuel, bro. But you guys signed this one dude. What was his name? Remind me what his name was.
What position?
I believe he's a corner. Maybe wrong.
We just got a corner, and I think his name was something Marvin. But we got Hassan Reddick in the D line. He's good. He had like 9 sacks last year. Not a bad pickup there. Who else we get? We got another defensive tackle. I think something Roy from the Rams, or defensive end from the Rams. We got what was his name? Perryman, I think.
Rashad Perryman.
Yeah, the linebacker from the no, not Rashad Perryman. Rashad Perryman was the receiver for the Ravens. He used to be, I think. But it's Denzel Perryman, linebacker for the Chargers. We got him. But I think it's important. We need some linebacker help. But right now, I think what I'm assuming we're going to do is we're waiting up on the receivers. We're going to bring in somebody else at the receiver position, so we get a third guy to replace Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
I think O-line, we've nothing special in the O-line yet. Like, again, we just got some guys that were okay. No one really special. Defense, I like the Reddick and the Denzel Perryman move. I like those 2 picks, but nothing special yet. We never do anything really big, splashy in free agency. The Panthers never do it. They have money. They actually, got some money this time around, but they're not. I think they're more focused on like Deshaun Watson, see what happens with that.
Well, he's been accused by 3 different women, and they're all masseuses in the Houston area.
I heard about that.
Franchise just Will Fuller just dipped out. Like everyone's gone from that team. It's insane.
Yeah.
It really is crazy. Except for like the Patriots are just giving them shitty players. Except for Marcus Cannon, they have like a really good O-line. They have Laramie Tunsil, Marcus Cannon.
Yeah.
Now they have a good O-line. I'm like, what the fuck? Why are they having this insane O-line? And they're just getting rid of all their skill position players. It's insane. Deshaun, I don't really know where he's going to go. Maybe he doesn't play. Maybe he's suspended, which is, he's getting Me Too'd at the moment. I'm not going to, these allegations are very serious. If they're true, that's very bad. Yeah. I think he should be punished for sure. But if it's another fucking Me Too, kind of like try to cash a check type of deal, that's fucking bullshit. And that's where you have to draw the line. Like the movie, Beautiful Young Woman or something like that with Carey Mulligan, who is nominated for a couple of awards. I saw it, and it's like like her best friend in college gets raped and then I guess and kills herself. So she's like on a revenge tour for all the men who are like super advantageous of women at clubs, take advantage of drunk sloppiness, blackouts, and like basically sexually assault women without their consent. And so she takes advantage of these men, and I won't kind of spoil the movie, but it's like about her revenge tour and what she does to these men, interactions with that. So it's kind of playing both sides of the spectrum. So women could be crazy, but men are fucked too. But my problem with the film, for instance, in a lot of these situations in the Me Too movement is that, for instance, I would never do that. My thing is like, how do you get that mindset where you feel the need
Yeah.
in desperation of sex, of some pleasure, that you gotta harm another individual, a woman, maybe you're gay, harm another man, whatever it is. Like, are you
Yeah.
for real, bro? Like, there's somebody out there for everybody, right? There's plenty of fishies in the sea, as they say. They use that a lot. So find that person, hold them tight, ride with it, roll with it, rock with it, whatever you want to do, bro. So it's like, that is so fucked up. And especially when there's bystanders, if you see a friend, for
Mm.
instance, talking to a
Yeah.
girl, I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day. I'm single, ladies out there, girlfriend as in friend. but I was talking to her, and she was like telling me a lot of different things that men don't realize they could simply do to combat situations like that. Say you're walking home at night in New York City. I used to walk home a lot. Don't walk so closely behind another girl, even if you are harmless, right? Just to make her feel more comfortable. Maybe even cross to the other side of the street. Or
Yeah.
say you see somebody getting harassed in the club or feeling uncomfortable, maybe step in there and like kind of diffuse the situation, even if you don't know
Yeah.
the person. A lot of people, I think, don't want to get involved in these situations because they know where it could lead.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it in a harmless, very caring way, I think every girl, women out there could realize that, okay, this guy's actually trying to help, and they will be thankful of it.
Yeah.
Or even if they're not, maybe they're too drunk to realize, but hopefully they can, or you will know at least that you're helping them out. And that also goes for the ladies too. You know, a lot of the times there's this whole like slut shaming culture and things you see on the Grammy Awards, Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B literally scissoring on stage. That I found was ridiculous, and I'm already not a fan of those two as it is, so I was like, fuck off stage.
Yeah.
But
You
I'm
really
not
like
trying
him,
to see that shit.
right?
I just go on Pornhub for that shit, bro. Come on. But my point is, like, you can't, men sometimes can't help themselves if a girl's literally throwing their titties, ass, vagina in your face. Like, what are you supposed to do, bro? What are you supposed to do
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
situation? Like, and like, you
Yeah.
expect us not to be aroused, turned on, and like want something more out of it. And it's like,
Mm.
I'm not saying that you're allowed to do that. They have every
Yeah.
right to dress, look how they want. But if they're physically coming into contact with you, touching you, oh my god, so cute, whatever it is, it's like,
Yeah, it works both. I mean, it works both ways, right?
it's
So
like
that's
a
contact
slippery
with
slope,
with
man.
you.
It's a very slippery
Yeah.
slope, and I think that
I agree.
that it's just like such a hard thing to combat nowadays, man. And
Yeah.
I just hope that, back to the point I was making, is like, Deshaun Watson, hopefully you didn't fuck up, bro, because you have a bright
Yeah.
future ahead of you. You're probably gonna have a Super
Yeah.
Bowl in your trophy case one day.
No, I agree.
Should already have an MVP, I think, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I hope
man.
I hope
I
it's not
hope it's
true.
not. I hope it's not true.
Because I heard, from what I heard, there's going to be 6 civil cases that come out.
Yes,
That's what I've heard.
correct.
So from 6 different massages. So this either seems like 3 different things. One, it seems like it's, look, it happened. It could have happened. It could really be a thing where he did do this, and the extent is nuanced between each case.
Yeah.
I do think the extent matters, but the difference is that 6 women would mean a pattern of behavior. And I've always said this, I think too much in our society, we have this, there is literally no nuance anymore with talking about these things. Like, people compared what happened with Aziz Ansari, which was a mistake one night. He did something wrong, but there was no instance of a pattern of behavior. No other women or individuals that came out and said that he did anything else to them. And this was just one moment, yet he was treated like Harvey Weinstein, who mutilated, rape. I mean, not mutilated is not the word. I mean, you go down the list: assault, harassment, abuse of power. I mean, you probably have rape in there. I mean, this guy was a terrible human being who should not be allowed on this earth anymore. Yet they were compared, and I mean, one had a lot of power in Hollywood, and struggled to lose it. I mean, even after all that, like, he still maintained parts of his power. The other individual was blackballed. And it's just, there's no nuance, in these discussions anymore. Like, in the case of Deshaun Watson specifically, like, if this is a pattern of behavior, I think that's the real difference. Like, is it one instance or a pattern of behavior? And it seems like it could be a pattern. Second option is that it's unique timing, which is that it's weird that it's happening now when he's asking to be released. Is it possible that the person who's coming forward with these accusations, they're being represented apparently by a lawyer who's friends with the owner? I mean, so what's up there? Is there some shady deal going on where they're trying to set him up so he can't leave? That is a real option. I wouldn't be surprised, because let's not forget what that dude's dad said His father said, this is like a prison. These are my inmates, and I'm the warden. That's what he said. So he thinks of them like that. So I do, and there was racist connotation in that as well, because I think what he meant were the black players. And so what I'm saying is, I think that that's also possibilities being set up. And then the third thing is, you've got a situation where there's a mental problem that Deshaun Watson has. There's a mental health problem, because seems, if he's doing this to just masseuists, it seems like a psychological problem. There's something that happened to him in his childhood, or something he's trying to do for some pleasure that's causing him to want to specifically target these females. I find that interesting. I don't know which one it is. I really don't know. I hope the information comes out, and I'm not going to make a judgment on him until all the information comes out, because we do this way too often in society. So.
Yeah, bottom line, homie just wanted a happy ending. Maybe.
Well, I want him in Carolina, bro. We need him. I still want him to go. Maybe his trade value is a little better now. I don't know. I would love Carolina got him, because I hope to God this isn't true. And so that he can come and play and be the great, football player he is, and the good off the field person he is, because he hasn't had any problems his whole life. So this is really just a weird situation. Yeah.
Well, all right, bro. Let's get in the fit of the week real brief. All righty. So I featured Kuz here a lot, just because this man is like a Laker icon. Him and Bron, I swear.
Laker icon, bro.
No, LA. I meant to say Laker fashion icon.
Bro,
I meant to say.
Yeah,
Laker
maybe that.
Nah, for sure.
Hey,
bro.
the Hornets playing the
Everybody
Lakers
loves
tonight.
Kuz.
Hornets playing the Lakers tonight, baby.
Yeah, they're about to get LaMelo's about to get shit on because he's stupid. Opened his mouth against LeBron, dumbass.
Honestly, bro, I'm curious what you thought about that, because I didn't think he said anything that bad.
I didn't say anything bad, but that's not being humble, bro.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
Get the fuck out of here, little boy. You about to get.
You don't talk a lot though. When he answers interviews, he usually don't answer the question. He usually says a few words. So I don't think he's ever going to speak again. Now that he's out of context.
That's fair. LeBron's going to teach him a little lesson, but
we'll see. We'll see. Probably.
Then you got a little throwback. Got Pac, Rat Shah. Shout out Tupac, rest in peace, Machiavelli. Very interesting fit here. Total 90s fit.
It's lit.
Total 90s fit. I love it. Tyler Creator could really rock this for sure. That's something you rock. And this is actually, everybody, this is for those of you who aren't familiar with jazz, this is Miles Davis, late great Miles Davis. My middle name is actually Miles, after Miles Davis. So, a little fun fact for you guys there. Look at him. Look at this guy. What a stud, bro. What a stud.
I love that hair, man.
Love that. Little perm.
It's a nice perm, bro.
A nice perm. Oh, man. It's the boy right there. And then last but not least, who is that? Oh, shit. That's me. What?
You really did this shit, bro. You really hyped yourself like this, man.
Fit, bro. 20s themes. My mom's birthday. Shout out, mama.
Happy birthday.
Rolling 20s theme here. Check them all. Wristwatch. TikTok with the wristwatch. Mr. Big Boss PNG. Fuck you thought. That's just me, baby. All right. But yeah, looking spiffy as fuck. Great Gatsby rolling 20s right there. I love it. Anyway, bro.
The vibe, man. The bow tie and everything, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How's you looking down at the watch, even though you know what time it is? You really looking at your iPhone?
It's Dame time. No, but yeah, bro, shit. I think that we had a good show today, man. I really enjoyed it. It
was great. I was glad we got my uncle on here, and I think he whipped out some real cool advice for the youngins that are watching this, or whoever's watching.
Yeah, for real, man. Everyone listening to this, I hope you like it, comment, share it, but really, really share it. This is some valuable information that you can't get every day. Yeah. And I hope you actively listen, take it all in, gain some wisdom. As we always try to give you guys wisdom every week, but especially this week, I think it's very important for our future of education and your kids' futures as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as always. It was a pleasure, my brother. I hope you
always been a pleasure, man. It's always a
pleasure. Always is. And yeah, that's a wrap for this week, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate you. Everyone have a great weekend. Okay.
God bless.